we are here to give you the latest updates from the IRS. On June 20th, moments before the summer solstice, the IRS issued a news release to give us an update on the continuing moratorium on ERC claims. As most of you remember, on September 14th, 2023, the IRS instituted a moratorium on processing new claims that were filed after September 14th. And the IRS stated that moratorium is going to be in place until at least December 31st. Hi, my name is Rebecca Shepard. I'm a tax attorney here at Frost Law. I'm here with my partner, Peter Huckabo, and we are here to give you the latest updates from the IRS. On June 20th, moments before the summer solstice, the IRS issued a news release to give us an update on the continuing moratorium on ERC claims. As most of you remember, on September 14th, 2023, the IRS instituted a moratorium on processing new claims that were filed after September 14th. And the IRS stated that moratorium is going to be in place until at least December 31st, 2023. Well, since then, we've gotten a couple of updates, most recently on June 20th, stating that the moratorium is going to continue into the foreseeable future. Peter, do you want to kind of explain where we are right now?
Yeah, sure. So the information release that came out last week gave us a little bit more of an insight into what the government has been doing during this processing moratorium. We've known that they've been going through and scanning these things, digitizing them. But it seems as though they've done some analysis as well. And so the commissioner's information release identifies really three categories of claims, from the least risky to the highly risky. What they have said is that approximately 10 to 20% of the refund claims that are part of their study group, so their study group is identified as those post-moratorium claims, approximately 10 to 20% of those are high risk and will be denied in the next weeks and months. Formal disallowance or some sort of communication forthcoming. They also identified that somewhere between 10 and 20% are acceptable risk, low risk, and will be processed at some point, quote unquote, later this summer. So true to form with the commissioner's announcements, recently he's referenced seasons and has sort of done these things at the end of each season. So announced the Voluntary Disclosure Program, very last day of fall, came out with this information release, very last day of summer. That's why Rebecca acknowledged the summer solstice. So for those of you who are in that lower risk category, 10 to 20% of all claims, look for checks to start coming probably September. And then there's the big, group in the middle, somewhere between 60 and 70% of the study group claims that the IRS has reviewed are identified as having an unacceptable amount of risk. What the government has said in their information release is that they are going to ask more questions and follow up on these things to evaluate more specifically the individual refund claims.
Another part of the IRS news release is that there is discussion about opening a new voluntary disclosure program. For those paying attention, like Peter said, the last day of fall, the IRS announced a voluntary disclosure program that closed on March 22nd. The IRS is saying that that program was a large success and they are interested in doing it again. The terms may not be as favorable, but they may offer some sort of amnesty voluntary disclosure program for folks that have cashed their checks and that believe that they have improper positions or want to return that money to the IRS. So be on the lookout for that. I think that's also probably going to be later summer, if I had to guess, but it could be sooner than that. The other takeaway is that, this moratorium is continuing. Peter, what are your thoughts?
Right. So the government has been very explicit in that the moratorium is in place. So anyone who filed after September 14th, 2023 really doesn't have any administrative option here. And so what the commissioner has said, or what the IRS has said in court filings, is to remind folks that they have refund claim jurisdiction here. The district courts can hear these cases. So For those who have filed after the moratorium and for which the government has said they are not going to process your claim, you need to be considering whether or not you can take additional action and sue to have the refund claim processed. That is completely viable here. The government has acknowledged it. There's a handful of cases now, but I anticipate that will pick up, especially in light of this most recent information release.
And the IRS has acknowledged that refund suits are a remedy to taxpayers and that they fully expect taxpayers that think their positions are strong and that can go forward in litigation should take that option. They've discussed it in the news release and in other litigation that's been going on in the country. The problem for some taxpayers is that their claims may not be large enough to warrant that type of litigation. Litigation can be very expensive. If that is you and you're concerned that you're not necessarily in a good spot to litigate your claim, but you do have a undue financial hardship waiting for your refunds, you are due this money, you're an eligible employer, there are some other options for you. Maybe discussing with your congressperson, filing a taxpayer advocate claim, and we can help work through those scenarios as well if you want to discuss either litigation or kind of going a more administrative route in order to see whether or not your claim should be paid and if we can get it expedited. What the IRS is saying is that if your claim is valid and you are comfortable in your claim, there's no additional action you need to take. They're going to process these returns on a first in, first out basis. However, prior to the moratorium, pre-September 14th, 2023, there were 880,000 returns that the IRS was reviewing to process. What that means is it's going to take a very long time for most claims to be processed, whether they are valid or not. We believe that the improper claims are going to either be disallowed or sent additional correspondence in order to respond to some sort of audit. So part of what the IRS is saying is that there is 60 to 70% of these claims that fall into this highly ineligible category. In order to process those claims, the IRS is going to need additional information. So, Peter, what do you think the IRS is going to do?
Yeah, so that unacceptable risk category, that 60 to 70%, should be vigilant and should be watching their mailboxes because notices are likely to come asking for additional information. We were aware of a form, Notice 6612, that was being sent out last year. We haven't seen a high volume of that, but certainly that is possible. But to the extent you're receiving mail at some place that you're not frequently at, or a PO box or something like that, we envision a relatively short turnaround just because of the sheer volume of claims that are out there, that the government's going to have to get in and get out and go quickly with these in their sort of investigation of this unacceptable risk category. And they're going to have to make decisions quickly, based on the information that you provide. So it's probably something around a 30-day turnaround time. So something to definitely be vigilant about.
Absolutely. So if you're in that 60 to 70% block, and we don't know, I should say, because the IRS has said they fall into these categories, but they actually gave us none of the criteria that they used in order to make that determination. So it makes it really challenging for practitioners like ourselves to properly advise folks whether or not their claim is in a bracket where it's just going to get processed or that there's going to be additional information needed. That being said, if you have not received your refund checks yet and you feel like you have a good claim, it is time to start putting your information together because there is going to be a tight turnaround. You are going to want to be able to ready to go as soon as you get that notice. Make sure that the IRS sees exactly why you're eligible and how the credit was calculated. The other thing to pay attention to is that the IRS has said, okay, if you're in the 10 to 20%, claims are good. They're going to be judiciously processed in a first in, first out basis. Well, prior to the moratorium on September 14th, 2023, there were 880,000 returns waiting to be processed. So even if you are in that category, it's possible that it's going to take a long time for your return to come through the system. The IRS has said there's no action you need to take. You just need to wait. For folks that can't wait, we have clients that are on the verge of bankruptcy, clients that are taking out HELOCs on their homes to keep their businesses afloat. That is a much bigger concern. So while the government is telling you there's nothing you need to do, you may feel you need to take action, in which case, give us a call. We can kind of give you your best steps forward and whether or not you're a good candidate for a refund suit, whether or not you need to be withdrawing your claim, there should be participating in the voluntary disclosure. We can help you kind of make these decisions and your best steps to move forward. So give us a call or shoot us an email. We're happy to help. Thanks.